Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NPU Live. I'm Keri Rodriguez.
And I'm Tim Langen.
Thank you so much for being with us. It's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday.
We're halfway through week 7.
It's almost May.
Yes, it's going to be May. The end of this week.
End of this week, it's going to be May 1st.
Whew, our long spring continues.
That's right.
But we're getting through it. We are getting through it. Today is going to be the only ray of sunshine we get all week up here in the Northeast. So this afternoon, if you're in the Northeast, you should really get outside, enjoy the time period between 2 and 4 p.m. before we get back to more snow showers and everything else. So
get outside and stay the hell away from each other.
Yeah, and if you got boys,
run them. Run away from each other.
Run them.
That's right.
And run away from each other. But if you have 2 hours to get out into a field and run those boys, burn off some energy, then I would suggest you do it.
I think that's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Wonderful Wednesday, and we've got great guests coming up for you later in the broadcast. But of course, this week too, tomorrow, very excited to welcome Virginia Walden Ford, who's a legendary parent advocate, subject of a new movie, who is going to be joining us, and I'm very excited to.
That's right. I can't wait.
Her to the program. Peter Cook from New Orleans, well-known education activist. But of course, Thursdays are for Dad to Dad.
Thursday's Dad to Dad Day, 4 p.m. tomorrow.
And you've been doing your Dad to Dad homework, right?
Yes, I have.
Spreading the love. What was your homework this week for Dad to Dad?
I had an assignment. I had to. We did a little study. We texted our male friends. So last week we talked about. Whether men can cry, which was really about men showing emotion. And so we eventually gave each other an assignment off air about reaching out to our male friends and telling them that we love them. So like I would email text John Carroll here, and I would say, John, I love you. And there's nothing you can do about it. Because that's what Michael Scott does.
Yeah,
that's what he does. And if Michael Scott does it, and then he said to me, John Carroll says, Tim, are you trying to tell us Lassie is down the well? So then tracking the responses we get from that. So I've done that, and I am just tracking the responses.
Yeah, it's interesting, some of the responses. Maybe some folks not used to hearing that.
Maybe they're not. Well, I'm sorry, I come from the corporate world, and in that world, you say you love them, you get HR.
Yeah, because otherwise we know how you love talking about feelings.
Oh, I love talking about feelings and expressing them. And just because I'm saying I love you today because of this assignment does not mean I don't love you.
It just means
I'm forced to say it.
Pushing myself outside.
I'm just pushing out of my comfort zone as usual, because that's what we do during a pandemic.
Just like listening to Pitbull in the morning, as I was.
Whew.
You try to push.
Was that who that was?
Oh, speaking about pushing outside of comfort zones, we had a big step forward yesterday.
We did.
Yes. So just want to put it out there. We are continuing to introduce Tim to new and exciting Goya products.
Oh, yeah.
And you were thrilled, actually.
We talking about the egg?
Just a little egg white with some spinach. Add a little adobo, which adobo has now entered this house and is a staple. It's in the spice cabinet. I actually took it out and opened it, which is the next step. Once you bring
I have lots of spices now.
And then you do have lots of
I have
spices.
cinnamon now. The fact is, up until a few weeks ago, I would wake up every morning, I'd have my egg whites with my broccoli and some oatmeal. And I didn't realize why my egg whites just don't taste anything. And that's because you can add salt and pepper to them.
Or even something called adobo to them, which you had yesterday.
It was like the best omelet I ever had. It was so good.
He was amazed. He was like, wow.
So there's lots of love. There's love. It's saying it. There's love in food. There's lots of get out of my comfort zone.
We always put love in food.
Ooh,
too. That's the special ingredient.
Love in this pandemic.
I'm telling you.
Love in this pandemic.
Love.
That's right.
So let's get into the news. What's happening today, Sam?
Well, since we started off with some love, let's talk about COVID-19. It's still our top story, and the U.S. has passed 1 million cases now, official cases. 1,040,000 cases officially in the U.S. right now. Almost 59,000 deaths right now.
And those are
in
just
the
the
US.
folks that tested positive.
That's right.
One of the things that we're really concerned about is, who's been tested and who hasn't. We know that there's been a disproportional impact on communities of color, low-income folks across the country. We've been talking about that from day one because we had a feeling that was what was going to happen, and it did come to fruition. But, you know, as we're starting to see some of the data come out with, you know, from different subgroups, and thanks to our Congresswoman right here, literally our Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley, she was really pushing for that subgroup data so we would be able to determine, okay, are Black and brown folks getting COVID at higher rates? What we'd like to do now is really start pushing for equity and parity around making sure that people of color have access to tests. We've been talking about how the CDC has really transformed their requirements so that some of the symptoms that you can describe to a doctor may make you eligible, because that's really how they do it. Like, you've got to show signs of COVID, but in that this is an evolving virus, you don't know what those signs will be, and we're finding out more and more symptoms every day. So last Friday, the CDC revised those recommendations. I suggest you look at them because there are new symptoms that you may be experiencing, but you're not aware that those are related to COVID-19. So now that those are presenting themselves, we start to think about, oh gosh, you know, a couple months back, I had those symptoms. I had a really bad flu or cold, or I was just knocked off my feet, not really realizing that was COVID-19. But also, you know, now that we have these revised symptoms, more people are going to be eligible for tests. And of course, you know, now we're starting to stop and think, okay, these are the people we know were able to access tests. Again, poor Black and brown communities not getting access to the testing that they need. So the million folks we have identified are just, you know, a lot of folks of privilege, frankly, that have been able to get access. And we were talking early on about like how celebrities
who's had tests so far? I know Anthony Cuomo got it. Who's the guy who's going to be the next James Bond? I keep forgetting his name. He was on Luther.
I don't know.
We should have a special segment. Tim trying to guess a celebrity name.
And I'm so bad.
Ebby, that guy. You know, who's in The Office, had a bit part on some Marvel movies.
Ooh, yeah. I'm never gonna get this one.
Okay. Well, if you know that, if you know that guy, send it to info@npunion.org.
He might be coming up on the Facebook. I'm terrible at that.
But a lot of but the point is, not to take you off track there, a lot of celebrities being tested. And every time, and I noticed that has gone down, by the way, on the news, because I think there was some backlash to that, being like, how did you get a test? How did everyone on the Knicks,
on a private plane,
of all the teams you're going to test, why would you test the Knicks? No offense, New York and New Jersey delegates, but
well, and speaking of the Knicks, and we'll go down this rabbit hole while we're here. The LA Lakers, one of the organizations, the small businesses that got the Paycheck Protection Program money, to the tune of how much? Was it $4 million?
$4 million. So let me tell you what I'm going to do after this, if I can squeeze it in. There's a correction to yesterday's show. I was apparently not done with the application yesterday. I was just done with the documentation, and now after this show, I will upload the PPP loan application.
If you can.
If I can.
The website has crashed. The very first, Monday morning when they reopened the PPP website for small businesses to apply for paycheck protection grants, it crashed immediately and it was down all day. So you couldn't even apply on Monday when it reopened. That's right. Yesterday was also a disaster. And so here we are.
Who's this guy? Oh, we're gonna get it. We'll post it on Facebook. So the story is, we're all these small businesses. 48% of businesses in the U.S. are small businesses. They're applying for these loans. The LA Lakers, were granted a small business loan.
Idris Elba, you're talking about?
Idris Elba, he got a test. Okay, we can move on now with important things. Idris Elba. We know the name. The LA
I didn't know him from Luther. I never
Great show. Great show. If you want to binge watch a show, check out Luther. LA Lakers, the second most valuable NBA team, the fourth most valuable franchise. Somehow, again, they're the second most valuable NBA franchise behind the Knicks. Got a small business loan of about $4.5 million. So here's my thing. We have applied for this loan once. We will apply for a loan twice. I don't know what the process is after that, but I would assume someone and Keri, you will admit your sports knowledge is lacking.
Yes.
It's okay, but you're getting better.
Mm-hmm.
If you picked up a small loan application and you saw the LA Lakers, you would recognize them, correct?
Yes, I would know the LA Lakers, a very large team. Like if I know
they're
them,
well known.
they're a well-known.
They're well
team.
known. They're like the New York Yankees, okay, of basketball. Everyone knows them. Somehow they got a loan, and that's horrible. That's just horrible. All these small businesses. I'm sure all of us know someone who might own or work at a small business.
And has been crushed into dust trying to figure out how to fill out this application,
That's
how
right.
to get in front. There's a lot, just tons. And frankly, we want to say thank you as well to the many folks that have reached out to us to help us and support us.
Huge help.
In actually making sure we have the most effective application possible. But man, that struggle is real.
The paperwork is complicated. If you're not used to looking for it, if you don't have it handy, it is a pain.
Yes. It's
So
like a forensic analysis of your entire organization, to try, but
that's right.
What you gotta do.
But thanks to those consultants and thanks to our incredible executive assistant, Keisha Crockett, for getting it done.
Yes,
Ooh.
and some of the foundations that support our work, that
Yes.
put us in contact with the people who can help us get this done.
Huge help. Huge help. So anyway, we should probably move forward here.
Yeah, anything else in the news that we should be watching for?
Well, you know what? I think we should watch out. Speaking of coronavirus, again, Dr. Fossey, he shows up once a week now. I need him daily.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying, again, watch out. We're going to have a bad fall and winter if we can't get these countermeasures in place.
Yeah.
Again, combo of the coronavirus and flu season coming up this fall.
And D.L. Hughley putting out a really, really funny movie trailer. Bernita Bradley, one of our delegates from the National Parents Union and a member of the National Parents Council, actually just posted this on her page. We're going to put it up in the comments. You can't miss it. It's very, very funny. Corona Man and suggestions to stay in the house. Don't be used as a guinea pig to see if how this whole coronavirus thing is going. If you're living in Georgia or Tennessee or any of these other crazy states that have decided, hey, you know what? We're bored. Time to open up. Sorry, scientists. Got to get my nails done. Very, very funny video. We'll post it on the National Parents.
Your nails look great today, by the way.
Oh gosh, it's a hot mess.
Well, listen, guys, keep tuning in this week. Like Keri said, we have some big guests coming up. Tomorrow's Virginia Walden Ford and Peter Cook. We can't wait. Friday, Sharon Denard Dawson. And again, watch all of our other shows as well. Dad to Dad's on tomorrow. At noontime, you'll have our Spanish show, Facebook Live. At 2, Christina Laster. At we have so many shows now.
Yeah,
9
Bernita
p.m.
Bradley.
Bernita Bradley's got her shows now. 9 p.m. tonight. Close up your day with Marisol Ravusha.
That's right.
That's great.
Exciting day. Speaking of exciting guests, let's check in with Austin, Texas, and our friend Mira Brown, the head of Prepared Parents. Preparedforsuccess.org is their website where you can sign up for daily tips, and we suggest that you do it. And Mira, looking like a ray of sunshine as she does
You really
every
do.
morning, matching her little hoodie today, matching her walls, intentionally so.
Purposeful. I again, always full transparency. I have a t-shirt on, which is mom, which is what happens when I leave this room. It's just a t-shirt that can get dirty and can get food on it and all the other loveliness of being home with your kids. And then I put on my sweater to look professional during our time together.
Yesterday, was it yesterday? I don't know. All the days are blending together. A day I was looking in my closet at all of these dresses. I used to wear a dress every day, right?
Yeah,
every day.
every day.
Because I am a person who has a lot going for her, but height is not one of those things. So I wear a lot of dresses because pants are tough for me, my little legs. And so I literally wear a dress every day.
You do.
And I haven't worn a dress in like
7 weeks.
Like 7-8 weeks, which is very strange. I don't think it's ever happened in my life. And I was looking at my dresses and saying, wow, remember when
You miss them?
I used to
Or are you more comfortable now?
well, I don't know. I feel
Or both, not one or the other.
but I don't know. When you're dressed up, I don't know. You're fierce. You're
Yeah, you feel a little
ready
bit
to
different.
go. You feel a little bit different. Now I feel like I'm getting a little soft and
Well, you dress professional, you feel professional, right?
yeah. So I don't know. I might just
I've worked remotely for the past year and a half when we moved to Texas. And so before this, I was in running clothes every single day, right? Like I would take the kids to school and then I'd go for a run and I'd do my work, or I'd do my work and then I'd try to end a little bit early. And so this hasn't felt too different for me, but I agree. I was looking when I went upstairs to get dressed for this, I was looking at my closet and I was noticing like the half that is like my professional wear, especially when I used to live in California and go to the office every day and go into our schools and things like that. And I was like, oh, there was professional Mira just sitting in the back of the closet.
One, like I'm very bad at like casual clothes. Like I'm either like super professional or homeless. Like there is no in between. So like it's like I'm just not used
But
to
you're
like,
the best look. But you're the best looking homeless person I know. You really are.
I love it. We had thunderstorms this morning, and this is like a sign of basically like summer's arrived in Texas. There's no, before you'd have a day here and a day there. And now I was looking at the thing and it's like 90, 95, 100, 89, like just moving forward. And so I went upstairs too, and I was just looking at my closet. I was like, well, I can pretend like a sweater is, the rest of the country might be cold. And then like right outside my window, it's like 90 degrees. So I need to bring out the summer casual now, not the winter casual.
Yeah, I was excited. I had a pair of shorts on. It's this time of year that we here in this area have to kind of will spring to happen.
That's right.
Because it puts up a fight.
Yep.
We're no showers probably tonight. It'll fight us until the end of May. You
That's
never
right.
know what's going to happen, and then suddenly we get like 5 seconds of spring, and then it's hot as Hades.
105 degree weather.
Yeah, that's just
in the
way
shade.
it is. And then with climate change happening, which is real.
It's still happening.
Yeah, it's still happening. It's a hot mess, but a hot mess that we must get through. And
that Mira's going to help us get through.
Mira is going to help us get through.
I'm not sure my tip quite addresses weather today, but we will. And climate change. That was Earth Day last week.
Climate change tomorrow. Get
That's
right on that. Get your crack staff. We'd like a solution tomorrow. Thank you.
You got it. But I do want to talk to you guys today about two things. And so we recently, and by recently over the last couple of weeks, we're getting sort of two questions. One was, how do I help my kids figure out what they care about, figure out what matters to them, sort of find that meaning and that purpose? It was asked in a couple of different ways. And then the other question we were getting, which I think is a great one, which is, how do I start piecing together some of the tips that you all have been offering? Like, what does that look like when I start sort of putting these together in my life? And so I wanted to sort of answer both of those together today. And I think just sort of before we dive in, that first question from parents, I think, is totally spot on and so compelling, because whether home, school, work, all of that is merged right now, right? As adults, kids, sort of as humans, we are more likely to engage in the work that we're doing and stay motivated when it's personally meaningful to us, right? When we deeply care about it, it strikes a chord with us. And when we're more likely to sort of respond to setbacks and obstacles and sort of propel ourselves forward when something is deeply meaningful, when we can hold on to the thing that motivates us, and like when better than in a pandemic. And I think the only other thing I would say about that is that, if a gift or something positive out of this coming out the other side, sort of parents and kid, is that deeper connection, is more deeply understanding what matters to our kids and what they care about, and giving them that gift. And so I loved that question. And so we wanted to see, could we do both? Could we help parents and kids figure out what's meaningful to them, what they care about? And can we start piecing together some of these like research-based, tips and things that we can be doing every day? And so we created an activity, which I'm hoping we can pull up, and I'll sort of go through it. It's not meant to be an everyday, every morning sort of, 5-minute type thing that you do. There's plenty out there. But it is meant to be something that you can do with your kids every now and then. And each of these, gratitude and curiosity and things like that, are have decades worth of research and psychology and all of that behind them, and they are positive habits, right? You can start your day or end your day thinking about what's something I'm grateful for, right? In sort of teaching and nurturing that in our kids. Those are super important and really positive habits that we've talked about. But when you piece these together, all of them together, they become sort of puzzle pieces and indicators about what makes each of us unique, and sort of who we are and what we care about. And that's the goal of this activity. And so you sit down, there's a kid version and there's a parent version that we wanted to sort of try out and see. So parents can sit down and think about their kids. You can sit down with your kids, or if your kids are older, they can do this individually. And let's start with gratitude, right? So list 5 things that you're grateful for. And I wanted to sort of go through each and talk about a little bit about the why that's important, and then the what, right? And you can go to preparedforsuccess.org. For each one of these has a whole tip associated with it that you can read to really more deeply understand. I'm going to touch on just a small piece of it. But with gratitude, it's probably one of the, or has been named one of the most powerful sort of habits, right? It energizes, it heals. It's sort of the opposite of all of that sort of negative self-talk, right? That can really zap our energy. It does the opposite, right? It gives us a moment in time and gives us the ability to be thankful, to think about the small wins in our lives, what's going well. And it serves, when you think about it, as a reminder of what you value. Because when you sit down to think about what are things in my life that's going well right now, what am I grateful for, there is a connection between the thing most deeply inside you that you value. And so list 5 things you're grateful for. Interests. This one is super interesting. Did not mean to do that. This one is very much about what does your kid like doing? And the key is the ing. We've talked about this in the past, right? The key is the ing at the end of the word. What brings them joy? What's interesting to them? Drawing, cooking, problem solving, building, whatever it might be. These are interests that sort of drive our kids day to day. And everyone has their own unique ings, right? And we pair them together in our lives in ways that we probably don't even realize and think about. And it helps us figure out, right, what we care about, who we are, and sort of unlocks, right, what's inside of us and what we have to offer the world. And so as a parent, if you're doing this with your kids, or your kids are struggling to think about, like, I don't know what I like doing, right? Like when you see that there's something you can do every day, when you see that spark of excitement or that wonder of that burst or energy, ask them, like, what is it that you like about it, right? What had just happened in that moment, and record that. And when you record that, then you sit down to do this, you can start seeing themes, right, coming together on what you like doing. The third one is confidence. We're going to have a tip next week that we're going to talk about together with you all, but it is, I didn't know this, there is a whole ton of research and science that is fascinating around confidence. And confidence is belief in your abilities. And I think that that's really, really important, and that when your kid is confident in their ability to do something, they're more likely to do it well. And I want to just point out that confidence and self-esteem, right, are 2 very different things, and they get confused. So when you're sitting down with your kids, or your kids are doing this, self-esteem is sort of a higher opinion of yourself. Confidence is your opinion about what you can get accomplished, what you can do, right, what your abilities are. And so when you're thinking about your interests and you're thinking about what you like doing, that activity helps you build confidence, right? And then you relate that down to say, great, what are the things that I'm confident in? And then moving down, 2 things that 2 ways that you matter. We've talked a lot about mattering and just how important it is for our kids to feel like they matter and they belong. And that is the belief that you make a difference. As an individual, I make a difference in the world around me, right? I'm important to other people. Other people are interested in what I have to say, what I have to offer. And that connection, that mattering, produces a really strong bond. And that has been one of the like driving factors of kids' success in school, right? So mattering, that bond between, that secure attachment between teacher and student, or between parents.
Success overall in life is really important. And Mira, we were talking extensively about your tips later in the broadcast after you had departed yesterday about this specific point as it relates to our older kids and some of the struggles they're going through with grief and loss. And unfortunately, seeing an increase in online bullying and suicide as the result of what we're going through right now, and how we as parents can take a look at what are some of the warning signs, what are some of the things we can do, and literally referring to what you brought up directly around mattering and how critical it is, not just for our little guys to learn that,
our older ones,
our older kids who we may take for granted already have, of course they know they matter. We have a long-standing relationship. They're 15, they're 16. They know they matter to me. You don't assume that's
when they need it most. And because that's when, and we've talked about this when we talked about sort of why are teens having such a hard time social distancing, right? That is when developmentally teens need it more, because they are developmentally trying to figure out who they are independent of, right, their family structure, independent of other people. And it's, we all go through, we have to developmentally go through that. But in that moment, I think is when you find that mattering, your belief in them, right? They're sort of from their side, mattering to them is someone who is believing in them and listening to them and holding them accountable and believing in their potential and exposing them to new ideas. Like there are ways that you can do that. There are sort of simple actions that you can take every day that are super big and small, right? That help create that bond and help create that attachment and just help a child, older or younger, understand that they matter, and they need to know they matter to the world, right? But it has to start with that first bond, that first connection point to help them develop that. Yeah.
What's number one? That if we can go back, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay, please. The number one is thank you, is curiosity. And so our kids are innately curious about a lot of things. We know that, and psychologists view curiosity as a life force, like vital to your happiness, your joy, your intellectual growth, and just your emotional well-being. And all learning starts with curiosity, essentially, right? And kids have a lot of questions, and their curiosity is satisfied when you answer those questions, right? And that's how they also figure out what's their confidence and what they like doing, right? It's all interconnected. And so one thing that they want to that they're curious about, that they want to learn, and you can start with again, if you're doing this with your kids, you can start with like making a list of all the things they're curious about and choosing one that they want to go deeper on, that they want to be exposed to, and they want to explore, and maybe they want to pursue it in some way. I know we're at home right now. Pursuing it's going to look very different now versus potentially in the future, but there are many ways to do that. And when you bring all of these together, the gratitude, what you like doing, what interests them, their confidence, what they're curious about, you get a pretty good look, right? When you put all those puzzle pieces together about what makes your kid unique, and they get a really interesting look into themselves and what matters most to them. And so we wanted to share this activity. I'm going to be doing it with Gabriel. I'll let you know how it goes with the little one, a kindergartner. And I think it will have a lot of roly-polies on there still and other interesting things, but he's 6 and I think it's great, and so you can then sort of look at your answers, start seeing themes together. And then you'll see that we have a parent version. I think it's sometimes interesting to sit down as a parent and do it first, and then sit down with your kid and start to see, right? Like, are we on the same page here? Are we, do do what we think, like, does our kid know they matter? And right. And then your kid puts down, how are we showing them they matter? And I think it's actually a really interesting way to check in with each other as well. Parents and kids.
I'm gonna try to do this with my kids to see, how they intersect there, to see if we are on the same page.
I'm gonna do it with me.
Exactly. I think we each could do it with ourselves.
That first one there, gratitude, Mira. The first thing I jump to when my kids, there's nothing worse than when you bring your kids to, yes, I do it. You bring them to McDonald's, you're running at the park, you have this amazing day. And then around 4 or 5 o'clock, they say, or you go to the Museum of Science, and at the end of the day, they say, this is the worst day ever. And you're like, what?
I know. It drives me nuts.
Be grateful. But then there are days too where as an adult, you want to say, like, well, why am I in a bad mood? Mm-hmm. No, 9 times out of 10, it's because I'm not being grateful for the things I have.
That's true.
Yep. And again, these individually are habits, things that we can make routine on a very small scale, certainly, right? But to your point about ending your day or whatever it might be, that are extraordinarily powerful to sort of how we think and how we feel and how you get through a crisis like a pandemic, but then just sort of how you are as a person, right? How you want to be perceived and how you want to sort of enter into the world and society around you. But also when you put them together, right, they can also be on sort of that grander scale of just who am I? And I think kids right now, I think a lot of us, I feel this way, right? Like, who am I is a interesting question, because we've all been pushed into places, to your point about comfort levels and sort of new realities. And it's not as easy to know who you are and what we care about.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
No, I agree. I agree, especially now with all these new realities that you're talking about. It's a whole new world, and it's important to call these things out now more than ever.
Some folks actually calling out directly on our Facebook. Erica talking about being grateful for chocolate, for sunshine, for great organizations like NPU, for making social distancing that much easier. So
chocolate helps.
That's right.
Chocolate and sunshine.
It always helps. It's a waste of calories if it doesn't have chocolate in it. That's my opinion.
No truer words have been ever spoken during the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. You guys can download. It's a very simple download on our site. And then again, we would love. We are responding to what parents are asking for, or we're trying to respond to what parents are asking for. And so, if you have questions or you do this activity, Keri and Tim, and you have feedback or other things, please let us know. Like, we are here to help and serve and support parents. I'm going to do the same thing, and we'd love to hear from you.
You're doing a great job. Preparedforsuccess.org.
Thanks, Mira.
Organization, Prepared Parents. Be a prepared parent by signing up for the tips that you can get every morning in your email box.
That's right.
And I'm going to do this download today. I'm going to see if my wiggly babies will sit long enough to go through an activity.
This will be our exercise. So like when I'm done telling every male contact in my phone that I love them, I'm going to do this exercise.
I like it. I like it. I think we as grown-ups need to do this activity too.
Mira, tell Ben not to be freaked out. I know.
I won't. I'll let him know it's coming.
Tell him I love him.
I haven't met you, but I love you. Yeah. Thank you both so much.
That's right.
And your Costco stockpile.
That's right.
All right. Mira, thank you for being with
us
Mira. Live from Austin, Texas.
See you tomorrow.
Now we go to Colorado and welcome Landon Mascarenas, who is with the Colorado Ed Initiative. He's the Vice President for Community Partnership at the Colorado Education Initiative. He's a state board member for the Colorado Community College System. We've been talking a lot about community colleges too of late and how they are preparing. And we're just so excited to have Landon with us. Landon, how are things in Colorado? How's everything going?
Things are great in Colorado. It's really good to see you all. Thanks for having me on the show. Just loved that last discussion. That was totally great. Really appreciate it.
We love having Mira on every morning because as parents, we need to kind of start our day with some hope, with some tips. How do we get through this day? So that's the community conversation we're having with over 1 million families across the country every week. So
that's awesome.
We do that, but we also love to be able to check in with different parts of the country. And we talked to some folks in Colorado a couple of weeks ago, but haven't checked in this week. So how are you guys making it in your state?
We're making it. I think that we have strong leadership at a few levels of our state, in terms of the governor, in terms of how he's managed this, the team around him, our state commissioner. We have a lot of organizations that have really leaned in to support communities during this crisis, in particular around basic food needs, basic access needs, internet needs. And then I think on top of that, we have resilient communities. But let's be real. I mean, this is impacting a lot of people here on the ground, as it is everywhere. We can talk about this at any point, but small businesses, restaurants, service industry, the implications are pretty massive from an unemployment perspective. I know that there were new GDP numbers out today, showed down 35% projected in Q2. That has implications in Colorado. But I think we're lucky to live in a beautiful state full of really talented people that care a lot about communities, and we're going to work together to make it possible.
Your governor is a good friend of the National Parents Union, and we're a huge fan of his. And, just so grateful that Colorado has strong leadership in this moment. And he is a man who considers the opinions and the recommendations of scientists and doctors.
Yes.
So,
and parents.
And parents, yes, and appreciates our context. So we're just so grateful. We feel like you're in good hands in Colorado. So thank goodness for that. We can't say
That's
that.
Right.
So
I think that we are seeing that local leadership and local work matters now more than ever in this moment.
And when we're seeing local work and local leadership, we have to talk about parents, because our organization is an organization of 200 organizations across the 50 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. And what we're seeing from all of our organizations, we are not just parents dealing with this in our own homes, but a lot of us are the doers. We're the ones that are dropping off food. We are trying to make the connections. We're trying to make sure that families have what they need, but also speaking truth to power to make sure our context and what we're dealing with, and frankly what we need, is being reflected in the response we're seeing from policymakers and elected officials. So there's been no restful pandemic for parent activists across the country. And
no.
So from your perspective, I mean, this is something, in pre-COVID-19 times, you've been talking about and encouraging parents to step into their power and providing their context, because frankly, we know it's needed. How do you see it, from where you sit? Do you see parents stepping up, and what has it been like in Colorado in terms of engaging our voices to make sure that, our priorities are heard?
Man, well, I love this. I just love this conversation, and I think it's just such an important one. And the reality is, it's been important for a really long time. It's been important for a really long time. And if we go back to the way that our school systems were designed, the opinions of most of our parents and most of our families and most of our communities were not incorporated into the actual design of the school system. And in fact, in many cases in particular, they were specifically excluded. Mm-hmm. So I often refer to that in my work as closed systems. These are systems that are closed off from the communities and families that they're a part of, and that they've been designed kind of in absentia from their voice and their power. And we've inherited these closed systems. And in fact, all the isms of the past, classism, racism, sexism, colonialism, are baked into those closed systems, which means that they can still be inhabited by lots of smart, talented people who are working against those isms and oppressions. But fundamentally, if the system's still closed, it's never able to receive the energy and voice and power and talent of the parents, communities, and students that have the potential to redesign it for better. And so that's what I've dedicated my career to, and I call that open system work. The idea of opening systems up to the communities they serve. And there has never been a time, I think, it's always been important, and we're seeing the impact and challenge of closed systems even more now. It's almost like the tide has receded from our school system, and we're watching closed systems and open systems in some cases deal with this moment. And the reality is, the open systems are dealing with it better. They have partnerships in the community. They have community connections. They're working with parents with regular communication. And the closed systems are struggling in this moment.
I do think this is an unprecedented challenge, but also an unprecedented opportunity for us to really step up and maybe have some transformative change, because this has been such a revealing moment.
Right.
you and I both know, let's be realistic here too. We are disruptors and we fight against a status quo, and there are very powerful special interests that want to hold on to that status quo to both hands because it's easy for the adults. You know, we've built an education system that puts the wants of adults and what is easiest for adults ahead of the needs of children. And that's why we have these closed systems that are not responsive to evolving society, a changing demographic, the changing needs of our community, our economy, all of this. We're holding tight to this system that has been generationally, institutionally racist, that has oppressed the kids and families that it's supposed to serve, because that's what it was kind of built to do. So in the best of times, it was a tough fight because, parents are building political power and we're doing that work, but it is a struggle. And some special interests have 45 years of organizing and resources ahead of us. But, we have something that's very, very special and is, you can't even quantify its value because it's families, it's children, it's that power, and it's that inspiration, that fight that we bring to it. So as we transform the way that we take on these systems, how do you suggest? I mean, you guys do a tremendous job in Colorado. You're speaking to delegates across the country right now that are tuned in, that are trying to figure out, okay,
what does this mean?
How do I activate myself and get in this conversation? How are you guys doing it in Colorado? What do you suggest to our delegates? How do they get involved?
I mean, to me, I think this is the question I dedicated my career and life to. I know it's the question you dedicated your time to, and I think that we can't step away from the importance of this moment. And if I could push a little bit harder, I would say we have to be sophisticated. We have to be thoughtful. We have to be sharp about the way that we talk about this work. It's one of the reasons why I joined the Denver Public Schools Office of Family Community Partnership, because I wanted to dig in that office and learn how a large system does family and community engagement. I now work with school districts all over the state of Colorado on questions of community partnership. And I think we have to think about this in multifaceted ways. I think we have to think about it in levels of partnership in terms of openness from the system. We have to think about what are classroom level actions, what are school level actions, what are district level actions. And what I would tell you, and I think you see this a lot in work, is a lot of our advocacy organizations go right to district level actions. But the data is very clear that parent partnership with the system and their ability to influence it is first and foremost with their student and the issues that matter to their student. And the data is clear that if you start with parents there, then you can help them understand school level partnership openness and then open partnership at the district level. And so we have to really think about what are the shifts and changes we're making at the classroom level across thousands of classrooms in systems. So we can advocate and we can push and we can put pressure on the top of the district. Absolutely, we should totally do that. That's not something we need to stop doing. And unless we're shifting educator and leader practice in the classrooms and schools across the country for this, for openness versus closeness, it's not going to change, because that's where the real redesign work is going to happen. And then I think we need to say, okay, if that's the strategy, we know where the entry points in the system are, where the opportunities for most openness occur. So things like home visits, extremely powerful. The data is very clear on home visits. And if you do home visits and then at the school level, you're having regular conversations every month, every year about what is this school? Why do we want it to look like this? How do we create opportunities for community-driven redesign? When was the last time that we had a conversation with our community about what the purpose of this school was? I mean, we have to think about it. What does it say about our democracy, folks, if our greatest public endeavor, education, doesn't utilize the greatest arsenal of our democracy, the voice, talents, and passions of the people it serves? So we have to have teachers going out and meeting directly with parents, hearing their voice, understanding their passions. We have to redesign schools on a regular cycle so that energy and flow builds into the system. And then we have to do the same thing at the district level and be in constant dialogue.
I think what you're talking about is the reason why we have so much opportunity right now.
That's right.
Talking about the hyper local level, parents and their students, because this is really a wake up call for a lot of parents that frankly, in the best of times, are still in the struggle, that may have just trusted the system to try to do its best for their child. Now we are forced and thrust into a position where we have to be engaged. There's really no If there's any learning, it's happening because a parent is facilitating it, and encouraging it, and is monitoring it, and is doing that in many circumstances. Not to discount, the older siblings who are also contributing, because many parents, they have a job, they're an essential worker, or they are working from home, and it's a team effort. So family, I should be saying, are really deeply engaged. Not that we aren't in a regular situation either. We are often the parents that are indicted for not caring because we don't engage on the terms of the system, which makes it work for many families. Because
that's right. I love that. Honestly, I love that so much. I would just like under everything you just said, I want like on a t-shirt, like I just like, or like on a poster. But let's first off, one thing we got to do, this is why we have to be sharper. We have to understand where the implications at the system level we need to work. And then we need to take that word engagement and we need to throw it away. Throw it away. That word engagement doesn't mean anything. It means something different to everyone. It's a useless term. Stop using it. The term is partnership. It's sharing power. It's working together. It's having clear roles. And the more that we say engagement and then we let the system say engagement, we are abdicating our role as a sharing power and authority with the system. And that's really important. And the reality is, I work with a ton of educators and school leaders and superintendents. We're doing redesign of whole systems with families and students. People want to go on that journey. They often just don't know how. So, parents have to, hold two truths. They have to be provocateurs to provoke, and they got to help others go on that journey. And that's tough.
And be a part of the solution as well. That's what's been special for what we've been able to do here in Massachusetts, where, we're not just the angry mob with the pitchforks. We are that angry mob, and we do have very sharp pitchforks, but we also come armed with a solution saying, we'd like you to do this or consider this. We think this is a good idea. And we've done our homework and our research to say why. This is a solution we're bringing to the table. Let's at least talk about it together about why we think this might work. And we're transforming that in this moment, in that we've been invited to participate in the conversation here in Massachusetts around what post-COVID-19 re-entry of public education is going to look like.
That's very exciting.
We have created the conditions by which you cannot do it without us. So we want to tell everyone, possible, we got to walk and chew gum at the same time. You got a rapid response and respond to your members and the folks in your community, but at the same time, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and policies will you and not with you if you're not a part of these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And this is the opportunity to have those conversations about the future. But we can't have conversations about the future without also talking about the present. And so we also have to stay anchored on that. I feel like a lot of education advocates right now, we're because we know the system is so broken, we're zooming ahead a little bit. And the reality is that in our schools right now, we have too many places where parents aren't at the table determining how the learning system is functioning for them right now. I talk to lots of schools and I'm like, what are you hearing from parents? And they're usually hearing nothing or too much right now. It's like we have schools where it's like, we haven't heard anything. I hope they're all good. And it's like, okay, we probably got to push a little bit more on that. And then we have folks where they're like, we've never heard more ever. Now, in both cases, there's an opportunity to take this present moment where we're redesigning in the present moment for how parents and students can name what's working, what's not working, what structurally is not happening, because in that design work together now will be the way that we get to light the way for the future. Because we can't stop talking about the future, but we can't let the systems and the parents and off the hook for the conversation and design now, because we're about to talk about summer, we're about to talk about fall, and those are some major conversations about the structures and systems that we build for parents from a learning and partnership agenda.
I'm going to ask you one final question, and
sure.
This is going to be the question that, moving forward, I had a very deep conversation with Dr. Travis Bristol, who is absolutely brilliant. He's a professor at UC Berkeley. He's an educator of educators, and we kind of came to this question. And this is really a deep question that I want to ask of all advocates across the country now, so that we're thinking, and I'm getting some feedback from folks. But that is, as we think about, what it was like before, what it is like now, and how we keep from losing a generation of kids. Just, folks that don't believe that poor Black and brown kids will be able to catch up. We had a problem before, with the belief gap that, some kids, by virtue of poverty or trauma or circumstance, just aren't capable of proficiency, just aren't going to be able to catch up. They're poor thing. What do you expect from these folks? I'm starting to see across the country a real movement of folks saying, well, these kids that have gone through COVID-19, that have had all this learning loss, we're going to do the best we can, but we shouldn't even try to get them proficient. Especially kids in low-income communities, Black and brown kids. What can you expect? How do you see? I'm very concerned that the conversation has gone to, we should kill any kind of evaluation, assessment, testing, anything that determines proficiency. We should just totally concentrate on, if we can get them to read by the time they graduate, that's going to be a win for this generation of kids. I'm concerned about a whole generation of kids just being lost because we've given up on them.
I think this is another great question of our time, and it will remain a great question of our time. And like all great questions, there will again be multiple truths, and there are multiple truths in the answer, in my opinion. One is that we cannot lose the fierce urgency of now to support every single kid in every single classroom to reach their full potential and to choose whatever life they want to live for themselves. That full stop. That is the truth. Second, we have to also be real that our current accountability systems were under major revision and rethinking before this crisis came into being. So this crisis intersects directly with a kind of larger education and system conversation and social conversation about what does it mean to have whole child indicators? What does it mean to grow and have socio-emotional supports as a student? How do we create the health for all students to thrive, which means that plays in tension with some of the ways that we had previously thought about other indicators that we had had. And then third, I guess the last tension then that I would offer is that we have to trust families, students to lead the way. Is that we should have honest conversations right now about this question with parents and families and students. And if we're not talking about this question with them, your student is about to graduate in 2 years under this system. What do you want them to be able to achieve by the end of the time? And for us as educators to just start to think and philosophize about that without co-creation and co-production being the ways that we determine what that looks like, then we've missed the whole point. And so how do we hold all three of those truths together? I think will be tricky, it will be challenging, but it will be probably the great question of our time in education for the next few years.
Landon, just tremendous perspective and insight. We so appreciate you joining us this morning. We love being with your organization and knowing that you're in the fight, and we're just, sharing solidarity with you in this moment. There are people across the country who want you to know that we have your back. We see you and the work that's happening in Colorado. And if we can ever be helpful, call on us. We're going to call on you and look at a shining example too of how we can provide information and resources about how to get this done across the country. It is possible for parents to be participation. It's
Absolutely.
not possible, it's necessary. So Landon Mascarenas joining us from Colorado. Thank you so much from the Colorado.
Thank you for all the work you do, and the solidarity is reciprocal, back and forth.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us. Such a joyful conversation. Hopeful. I love leaving these conversations filled with hope. And now we're going to turn to Tallahassee, Florida, and our friends from Excel in Ed. Our friend Cassandra, who is a friend of the National Parents Union and Massachusetts Parents United, doing tremendous work across the country and supporting states all across the United States. And Cassandra, so nice to see your face this morning. We haven't checked. We haven't checked in with Florida for a couple of days now. So how are things there? We hear, especially in Tallahassee, some things are opening up. Perhaps. What is that like for you, and what's happening in your neck of the woods?
So, Keri, I'm based a little bit south of Jacksonville, and so in St. Augustine, Florida. And so it's interesting. It's interesting to see people, out and about. I see a lot more people exercising, both with and without masks. I see a lot more families spending time together. riding bikes with their children. So I'm starting to see little things that are really little glimmers of hope from families, even in the midst of, for me, this is week 7 of having all my children home. So it's no joke, but it's nice to see you can, like Mira said, spending that quality time with your family in the midst of all the craziness that's going on.
So, Cassandra, we're going to get into your work and, excellence in education and all of the work that you guys have been doing, pre-COVID and post-COVID, but we want to check in on you as a mama. How are things going? How is life at home? Everybody's on top of each other. Any tips, any tricks? What's it like? And it doesn't have to be pretty, girl.
It's not pretty, Keri. So it's interesting. I feel better in week 7 than I did in week 2, right? So getting used to this kind of new normal and making sure the kids get dressed every day. We had to have like that conversation with at least 2 of the 3. So I've got a 12-year-old girl, a 9-year-old boy, and a 2-year-old girl. And so I think one of the hardest things for them is I didn't realize I wasn't meeting their social needs. They were learning, right? They were participating in their online classes. They were getting great feedback from their teachers, but they were missing that social aspect. And a big shout out to my kids' public school, because what they are doing right now is getting the groups that used to eat lunch together and actually putting time for them to just talk, which I thought was incredible. And so that helped a bunch. But you're right, it's not pretty. It's really difficult. It's hard having a toddler at home who's used to going to school and having that routine. I had to give my son a haircut. He looks a bit like a hamster now. There's no definition, there's no fade. He looked in the mirror and is like, okay. So God bless him. He's such a kind 9-year-old. But yeah, so just getting used to doing those things, or we were sewing our own face masks and we're trying to figure out what piece of clothing did we not need anymore to be able to pull the elastic from. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely interesting. I was listening, I've been listening to the NPU Facebook Lives, and I've heard you and Tim and Mira talk about how important it is not to have the news on because kids absorb that information and there's not the context there. And unfortunately, I had the news on just for a couple minutes. And that's when there was an announcement that Florida schools the campuses were closed until the end of the school year. And so that's how my daughter found out. And so that was so stressful for her. And she had really hoped to be able to go back, and she understands why. And now at this lunch bunch social time that the school is doing, things are better. But I think it's just, I don't know that anyone is giving kids enough credit. They've had their whole lives upended. And they're like, it just speaks to their resilience that they are able to continue moving.
And you just think about like how our kids are having to figure this out without any kind of example to follow. I mean, we had a conversation here about, some of our babies saying, well, Mama, what did you do when you had COVID-1? What was that like? And what happened with COVID-15? Like, do you remember that? Did that happen when you were a kid? And it's heartbreaking to have to turn and say like, no, baby, I don't know. We're all just trying to figure this out. And I've gone on some long walks with my kids, like one at a time, to kind of dig into some big feelings that they're having around like, why is this happening now? And why can't we just go back to the way things were? And why does it have to be so long? And all of these questions that there really are no answers to. And I've had to admit to my kids, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. We're trying to figure this out together. And the best thing we can do is just figure out how to be a part of a team, and try to be kind to each other and understanding when we have these big feelings of frustration. Everybody's frustrated. And, mommy doesn't have all of those answers, and as a mom, it's really hard not to have those answers and not to be a comfort. But, this is an unprecedented situation where we're all just trying to figure out, how to get through it one step at a time, literally one step at a time sometimes.
Yeah, that's what makes it tough, especially because, you want, as their parent, you want to be able to tell them, hey, there's an end coming, right? This is what the new normal is going to look like so you can prepare them. And that's tough because as you say, we don't know. And I think just the change, my learners, my three kiddos are really different learners. And so you mentioned kind of this earlier, it's helped in some respects, this has helped me be more engaged and more active in their learning because I'm having to live it right now. And so that is very fascinating to me, and watching the different learning personalities both struggle and succeed in this distance learning environment. So it's definitely different. It's definitely opening up, I think, more information that we see about our own children. And then, like you said, exposing some definite issues in the education system overall.
Well, let's get into that a bit. And I'm a big fan of your organization, Excel and Ed. We went out to San Diego to actually see you guys firsthand participate in a panel. I met some wonderful folks, just wonderful connections with Colleen Cook and Tracy Jordan, and just, it was wonderful to connect with people from across the country. But one of the moments that really stuck out to me was a moment where your former governor, Jeb Bush, who's the head of the organization, kind of got up on stage and immediately started talking about the importance of parents, how important we are, how important our voices are. And it really struck me because of the fact that, we hear those words so often. You go to conferences, you talk to ed policy folks, where are the parents? We need the parents, we need the parents. But then when the rubber meets the road, we're often, brought in as, the anecdote or, the afterthought, or I guess we have to check this box of engaging with parents. We don't really mean it, is what I mean to say. But listening to Jeb Bush get up there and immediately top of his talk to all of us, was saying, we need parents. Parents are important. Parent context is important. And for me, and I got to talk to him a bit about that after. How do we make that real? This moment, I really feel like is shining a light on the fact that we can't just mouth those words anymore. Parents have to be engaged. They're more engaged now than ever, because if we're not engaged, our kids are not learning in this moment. And right now, every single day, we're collecting data, we're collecting information. We have a lot to offer. And frankly, our entire lives have been upended. And there's no hope that this is going to change anytime soon. I mean, how public education has been will change as the result of this virus, because, we're going to have to practice social distancing, schedule changes. The introduction of increased online learning and distance, all of these things, are going to need our feedback. So, from where you sit and in your experiences, what would you say to parents right now about holding on to, like, while we're trying to be there for our kids and be those educators, how important is it for us to be thinking about that, and how our voices are going to be important in the moments to come?
So Keri, it's a great question. I think back about an experience I had where I was doing advocacy work with Excel and Ed in Action, which promotes legislation, across the country. And so I do a lot of talking and working with parents, helping them feel empowered to share their voice, to advocate for their children. And so I was at a school, and I think I had about 100 parents in front of me, and I said, "Hey, how many people have picked up the phone to ask, to do something for your child, to advocate for your kid?" Maybe it's you wanted to talk to a teacher, talk to your child's teacher, you wanted to call the doctor, and of course, almost every hand went up, right? Or you wanted to ask the neighbor for help on something. I said, how many people have picked up the phone and asked your lawmaker to help you, to help your child? And no hands went up. I think one hand went up. And I think that that's really telling, because I think that there's a disconnect. Because I think the misconception that parents aren't involved is simply that, a misconception. It's where the involvement starts to cease, because they don't know that there's policy leaders who can help their child. And within our organization, we have a great saying, policy changes lives. And so those policymakers who are making those decisions, as you said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So it's so important that, you're right, parents are not an afterthought, that they are driving the discussion. And so that's a lot of the work that I do, is talking to those parents. And In Florida, we have a huge track record of educational choice. So we went from one of the worst states in the country, and we still have a ways to go, but we've made incredible progress over the last 20 years. And yet we have new parents that are, coming into the education system every single day that have no idea what options are available for their children. And so one of the things that, living in the here and now, we try to make sure that parents know about those options, know about the different schools, the different learning environments, and to only accept that their child should be in the learning environment that's the best fit for their kid. And that just, it's gone are the days where it's a good school. It kind of serves my kid. We want parents to know that for 13 years of being in school, that their child should be leaving a lifelong learner and someone that's had success in those 13 years, not just someone that's been pushed along.
Yeah, that's what's been so radical, I think, in my evolution as a parent in this. And I know, a lot of other parents identify with me saying, like, I guess I had one thought when I had kids that, they're going to go to a public school because that's what's there. And that the educators in the building were going to be the experts on my child and guide me and make the best decisions for him because, that's their priority. And I was kind of programmed to believe that, like, they were better than me. They knew more than me. They were experts and I wasn't an expert. And it's really fascinating when you start to sit at those IEP tables or you start to watch this unfold in your interaction with educators and watching the politics of it and how we have unfortunately created a system that quite clearly from outcomes does not work for all children. Kids like mine are prime candidates for the school to prison pipeline. And, there's been no disruption of that. As the adults that run the system have very powerful special interests that hold tight to that status quo because it benefits them. And so kids like mine get lost. And I didn't realize how I had gotten lost in the system until suddenly, I'm confronted with it firsthand as a parent. And the other thing is not being provided with a menu of options. I am an expert. I'm an expert on Matthew, Miles, and David. Nobody knows those kids better than me. And frankly, I get very upset now, even today. Last year, I had a perception about what Montessori education was. Didn't really know a lot about it. I was invited to go and sit in a Montessori classroom and was devastated that wasn't an option to me because I'm thinking about my oldest child who's now in a therapeutic classroom and who has autism and special needs. To me as a mama, had I known that was an option, that private option, I probably would have picked that from Matt because it looked like the environment that would be best for how he learns. And I know that about my child, but as parents, we don't get that. We don't get to have that opportunity, and it's emotional to feel like you're robbed of that. But in this moment that we have these unprecedented challenges, but opportunities to sit and go deeper with our kids and understand how they learn. Now we have more information than ever. Do you think that, the fact that parents are having to be this immersed in their child's, education and be really cultivators and curators of curriculum and what the day is going to look like, are we going to be willing to give up those options and what we've chosen and the knowledge, so easily? Are you hopeful that we might have, parents saying, hold on a minute, I'm not putting my kid back into this status quo box. I want more and I want different and I want to see what else is out there.
I sure hope so. I know for me as a parent, and I've always felt that I was very engaged. Education is a passion of mine, so it would extend to my home life. And I've noticed parts for my kiddos that I have missed. So my son has epilepsy. And when I was sitting with him doing some of the distance learning, it gave me a new appreciation for his teacher, who is, constantly making sure that he is on task and on target. So it gave me that new appreciation for her, but it also made me realize, we're in this new situation where we're almost like a first-year teacher. And that's stressful, or we're a learning coach for our own kid. But just to the point you made, but no one knows them better. Even my son's teacher, who is incredible. Shout out to Miss Jackson. She's awesome. But I know Kevin, and I am now more empowered than ever, and I think more parents will be, to be able to be more decisive, to feel more empowered. And the problem is, Keri, is do they have the choices available to them? And I think that's one of the most frustrating things as a parent, is to know that something's not working, but have no other options. And so, I'll wave the Florida flag proudly, because we have something like 1.7 million of our, I think, 2.8 million kids usually going to a school other than the school that they're zoned for. And I think that's so important. So if we want parents to be involved, and schools always talk about that, right? Departments of education talk about that. But what is more, what is more key to involvement than choosing the school that your child is going to, or the learning environment, or the way that they're educated?
Well, the whole concept of it is just weird. Like, we assume that all kids that live in a particular zip code learn a certain way, so that we're all going to cram them into one school. Like, that's absurd. Like, they're not all the same. They don't all learn the same way. They don't thrive in the same environments. They're all different kids, and have schools that fit the different ways that they learn, or the different style. Like, it just makes sense that instead of having our kids conform to a system, that the system should flex to meet where they are and what they need.
Oh yeah. And in Florida, as I know you're familiar, we grade our schools based on student achievement. And I've still talked to other parents who've said, look, my school is excellent. It's an excellent, the school we're zoned for, it's excellent. But for one of my however many kids, it's just not working for them. And I think to some extent it's unfair for the teacher in the school, to have to be a mismatch for that child. So the more options we can give parents, the more empowered and informed. And that's why Excel in Ed has a great new resource that actually helps parents know what scholarships they qualify for in Florida. So we have a array of K-12 scholarships. And so if parents want to go learn, Florida parents, they can go to mychoicesinedfl.org. And they answer a couple questions about their child, and it gives them a personalized report. So it tells them, for example, if their child's behind in reading, do they qualify for a reading scholarship account? That's $500 for a parent to direct to help their child build those early literacy skills.
And what can you use those funds for?
So those funds can be used for tutoring. They can be used for specialized curriculum, and like a summer reading camp. So everything to help their child master reading on grade level. And so that's one of the scholarships that a lot of people don't know about. I think Florida is the first in the country to have that. But we have other ones for students who have been bullied, for children who have unique abilities and special needs. We have an education scholarship account program where a parent can customize their child's education. But parents can't take advantage of that if they don't know that it's eligible to their child. And so that's one of the things I think is so important. And I would say to any parent watching now, if you are looking at school choice, this is the time of year in so many parts of the country where you have to make that decision. Some districts in Florida, the school choice lottery was open in January or February. And so it is not too late to be looking at next school year and to be thinking about, how your child was doing the current school year, how they're doing with this distance learning now that you're able to observe their education. And what kind of ideal environment would be best.
What's so fascinating about this is, we're always comparing between families that are the haves and the have-nots. This just opens the door to a more level playing field, because families that have means are doing this, are paying for tutoring, are paying for camp, are paying for all of these extra supports. Like, that's how it happens. It's not just because they have, access to fancy teachers at the highest quality schools that they personally pay for out of pocket. They scaffold, they add all of these things, and that puts, low income families and some families of color, out of the opportunity access, lottery here. We just don't have the resources that unlock that opportunity. So these scholarships allow for parents to actually say, oh yeah, I actually need that. And to have that provided by the state through a scholarship so that they too can have access to these resources. That's fascinating.
It's so important, right? Because if you're wealthy, you can exercise your school choice by moving into a school zone that is where you want your child to go to school, or paying for a private school, or doing any kind of other type of education. But you're right, for low-income families who have been, who are in one zip code, and in that one zip code determines whether their child will graduate or not, is a problem. I think it's fundamentally an issue when your zip code determines the quality of education you'll receive. And so anytime we can open up and give parents more choices, and if they end up choosing their zone public school, great. That's what we've done. It's working for us right now. If it doesn't work for us in the future, I'll be looking at other options. And that's no slam on the school. And I think that that's really important. If I end up taking my son and sending him to a school that maybe better fits his needs because of his epilepsy, it's no slam on the school. It's nothing against the school, but I have to think about Kevin and Mary and Gabby, because no one else is looking out for them but me and my husband. And so I think that parents should not feel worried about that. You have to be unapologetic. Thanks. It's you can see the sleep is the sleep issue. That was the scary part I was talking about, the lack of good quality sleep. But yeah, you have to be unapologetic in advocating for your child, because it's not a one size fits all system. And the different schools, I don't particularly am concerned about the type of school. I want to know, is it working for the child?
Cassie, thank you so much for being with us. And if parents want to find out more information about what's happening in their state, I know Excel and Ed does provide incredible resources. Can you tell them where they can find it?
Yeah, sure. So for policy solutions across the country, and other great things, like we have a video series with Governor Jeb Bush. They can go to excelined.org. And if they want to engage more on advocacy, they can go to excelinedinaction.org. And I'll post both of those links, including the My Choices in Ed FL link. I'll post them in the comments, and I hope parents will check it out.
Cassie Alecki is joining us from Excel and Ed, live from Florida, just south of Jacksonville, right?
Yes.
For those of you who are familiar with Florida geography, I'm lost. I'm lost. I should spend more time in Florida. I'd love to.
Is that the Panhandle?
No, not the Panhandle. This is the first coast. So yeah, the first established city, so St. Augustine.
Oh, okay. I know that.
Yeah, so a lovely old place, old and where the old and new combine. So it's a great place to live.
Wonderful. Cassie, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Keri. Thanks, Tim.
And thank you to all of you joining us across the country this morning for a lively conversation and some news, some information, some empowerment. So we're just so blessed that you were with us this morning. It is Wednesday. It is April 29th. It is Keisha Crockett's birthday. Happy birthday,
Keisha Crockett.
Who makes all the trains run on time for the National Parents Union.
Seriously.
This doesn't happen without her. So
that's right.
Actually, I want to say, Keisha, if you actually go downstairs and open your front door, there's a little surprise waiting for you.
That's right. Open it up.
Right now. Go see.
Hurry up.
What you've been waiting for, and you can eat it all day if you go and pick it up.
That's right.
It's a trace.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.